The lawyer's office smelled of lemon polish and disappointment. Rain streaked the windows of the high-rise, mirroring the tracks I wouldn't let myself cry. My grandmother, Vivian Devereux, the woman who raised me, was gone. And now, her lawyer was reading her final wishes. My parents, Charles and Deborah, sat stiffly beside my older brother, Brandon, who was already looking at his watch. I, Amara, sat alone on the other side of the polished table. Double quotes, ... And to my beloved granddaughter, Amara Elise Devereux, the lawyer read, his voice monotone, I leave my personal design archives, my vintage sewing machine, and the sum of $10,000. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. It was something. The archives were priceless to me. The machine was her soul. The money was a seed, the lawyer continued. The remainder of my estate, including the proceeds from the sale of my brownstone, and my stock portfolio valued at approximately $3.2 million, is to be placed in a trust. I leaned forward. This was it. The trust that would finally let me launch my line, Vivian's Legacy. The trust shall be administered by my son, Charles, for the benefit of my grandson, Brandon Charles Devereux, to be used for his education, business ventures, and stability. The air vanished from the room. The entire trust, for Brandon, the archives, and scraps for me. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. My mother dabbed at hers. Brandon smirked, a quick, ugly twist of his lips he'd perfected since childhood. There must be a mistake, I whispered. Nana Vivian knew my plans. She believed in me. My father finally looked at me, his expression one of weary condescension. Amara, be realistic. Fashion design is a fantasy. A hobby. Brandon is getting his MBA. He's going into private equity. This money will give him a real start. Your grandmother wanted security for the family legacy, and what am I? The question hung in the air, raw and bleeding. You're our daughter, my mother said softly, meaning it as comfort but landing as a verdict. You'll find a nice, stable job. You'll marry well. The $10,000 is very generous for personal pursuits. Generous, the word was a slap. Nana Vivian had been my sanctuary, the one who saw the fire in me when my parents saw only impractical daydreams. She taught me to sew, to drape, to see the architecture in fabric. And in her final act, she'd abandon me to their judgment? No, I knew my grandmother. Something was wrong. The fight was brief and brutal. I demanded to see the original will. My father refused, citing legal process. I accused them of influence. Brandon called me a greedy, ungrateful brat. I left with a check for $10,000 and 2 heavy boxes containing my grandmother's life's work, sketchbooks from Paris in the 60s, fabric swatches from vendors long gone, and her beloved 1954 Singer sewing machine. I went back to my shared Brooklyn apartment, numb. My roommate, Chloe, found me sitting on the floor amidst the archives. She listened, her face growing stormy. That's not right, Amara. Your grandma talked about your line non-stop. She was so proud. Then why? I asked, the pain finally breaking through. Chloe, a law student, narrowed her eyes. Get a copy of the filed will from the probate court. Tomorrow, the official document was the same, but the signature. It was Nana Vivian's, but shaky, very shaky. It was dated 2 weeks after her stroke, when she could barely hold a spoon. My father had been her sole visitor in that time, managing her affairs. It was legal, but it wasn't her. The vibrant, fierce woman who told me to take up space in this world would never have sidelined me so completely. This was my father's doing, his final act of molding the world to his vision. Brandon, the heir. Amara, the accessory, the grief hardened into something solid, something I could build upon. What will you do? Chloe asked. I looked at the check for $10,000 and my grandmother's machine. I'm going to use their dismissal as my foundation. I'm going to make Vivian's legacy so big, they'll have to see it from the penthouse they bought with my money. $10,000 doesn't launch a fashion brand. It buys fabric, a basic website, and ramen for 6 months. I used my grandmother's archives not for nostalgia, but for blueprints. I reverse engineered her most iconic, out of copyright designs, modernizing them with my own aesthetic, a blend of her timeless elegance and my structured, bold sensibility. I didn't aim for department stores, I aimed for the influencers who valued story and exclusivity. I handmade 5 pieces, a velvet blazer inspired by the one Nana wore when she faced down a racist country club board, a silk slip dress, a tailored trouser, a statement coat, and a deconstructed tuxedo shirt. I shipped them to 5 carefully chosen fashion journalists and style icons with a handwritten note. This is Vivian's legacy. Her granddaughter is continuing it, wear it if the story resonates. One of them did. A powerhouse editor at Vogue who'd known my grandmother. She wore the velvet blazer in a street-style photo. The caption, Vivian Devereaux's spirit lives on. Legacy isn't inherited, it's built. At Vivian Legacy, the website crashed. Orders poured in for the Vivian blazer. I worked 20-hour days, cutting, sewing, shipping from my living room. Chloe helped. We reinvested every cent within a year. Vivian's Legacy was a cult brand known for its narrative of reclamation and exquisite craftsmanship. Within 3, we had a small atelier in Manhattan. I was featured in Forbes 30 Under 30. The brand was valued at $15 million. My family, who never bothered to look, suddenly saw me. Brandon's private equity firm had floundered. He'd burned through a third of the trust on bad baits. My parents' calls started, tentative at first, then laden with a new, grating pride. We always knew you had it in you. I ignored them. The pinnacle was New York Fashion Week. I secured a spot for my first official runway show. The theme was provenance. The front row was a who's who of industry power. And there, in the 3rd row, using connections I'm sure he paid for, sat my family, my parents, uncomfortable in their finery, and Brandon, looking sour. The lights went down, the music swelled. My models, a diverse tapestry of beauty, walked the runway in my creations, each piece incorporating a stitch, a silhouette, a fabric treatment from Nana Vivian's archives. It wasn't theft, it was conversation across generations. The final look was my own. I walked the runway myself, as many designers do. I wore the original forest green velvet blazer sample, the one that started it all. I stopped at the end of the runway, the spotlight hot on my face. I looked directly at my family's section. My parents were clapping, tears in their eyes. Brandon was staring, his face a mask of stunned, jealous disbelief. I didn't smile, I gave a single, slow nod. Not a forgiveness, of acknowledgement. This empire, this legacy, was built with their last $10,000 and my grandmother's faith. They had given my trust fund to my brother, hoping for a dynasty. Instead, they'd funded my revolution. And, as the applause thundered around me, I knew Nana Vivian was finally, truly, proud.